Hi, hello, and welcome to Bedtime Chats with Ilyssa, aka Vlogmas Day 18. This is going to be a rather short video, but I wanted to talk about something that got brought up in my live IG last night, and I figured that I would talk a little bit about it with you guys because sometimes people ask me, how do you deal with people in your family or friends that say openly misogynistic or racist or sexist or just plain old ignorant things? How do you get past that? Do you speak up? Do you say something? Is it your obligation to? Do you let it go? What is my role here? And though I am not an oracle and I am not a person who knows everything for everyone in every single circumstance, I do want to address a couple of those concerns by actually telling a story first. So when I was in college at UC Irvine in my freshman year, I took this course, I think it was winter quarter, and it was an intro to psych course. But really what it was sort of like an experiment. The entire course was an experiment. And what they had the students do was answer a lot of surveys, and most of the surveys were about implicit bias, and they were about how we see other people, how we perceive ourselves, and how we judge other people around us. Before I got to campus, there were a lot of issues of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia on UC Irvine's campus, and there was some kind of discord between Muslim Student Union and Hillel. There was just a lot of outrage on campus. So I think as a reaction to this, the psych department and the sociology department wanted to kind of get a pulse on what the campus kind of climate was regarding racial issues and racial justice. And so they put together this course that I ended up taking. And I thought it was kind of just like an easy A. I just had to answer a bunch of surveys and have discussions about implicit bias and, you know, I don't see color. I remember saying things like that. I was obviously not nearly as woke or understanding of social issues as I am today. And I thought, you know, I would just answer a bunch of surveys and I get a good grade in this class and whatever, right? But I remember one of the surveys that they gave us, one of the major questions on there that actually has stood out to me for years and years and years was, which race, ethnicity, or religion do you dislike the most? And you had to answer this question. It was required. And I remember that at the time, I answered Middle Eastern and Muslim people. And I think looking back now that there were two major reasons why I answered that at that time. The first reason was because I was raised in a home where, in particular in a Christian home, where I was taught that Islam was bad. I was taught that Muslims were bad, and therefore Middle Eastern people who I assumed practiced Islam, were then bad. And so I grew to be fearful of those people. Because 9/11 happened when I was 10 or 11, I think that that totally fueled the fire for Islamophobia in our country, and in particular within the Christian community, at least the people that I was around. So I think that was an easy answer for me because there was no one else that I genuinely feared or was taught to fear. I think any religion, and I'm not trying to bag on Christians, but any religion or any kind of group of people in general can fearmonger about another group of people that they don't know a lot about or that they are afraid of. And so they feed that to their children. And I mean, that's kind of what happened to me. So to go along with that then, the second reason why I probably answered that was because I had never met a Muslim person before. Honestly, I had never been friends with a Muslim. I'd never actually gotten to know a Muslim. I'd never understood the Quran or anything about Islam really in general. I just kind of believed the things that other people had taught me, and in particular what the Christian church had taught me. Some of it might be truthful, but I think a lot of it is skewed due to misunderstanding. It wasn't until that summer and then later on the next year that I actually got to know Muslims on my campus, that I actually got to know folks who practice different religions than the one that I was raised in. So I think that my reaction to this question being first and foremost born out of my fear, and secondly, born out of my ignorance and my not knowing anyone who actually was a Muslim. I think that's telling of a lot of different things about our society, and it's something that Adichie says is the danger of a single story. So if you've only known one story, that Muslims are bad, or that I don't know a Muslim, so this is all my perception is of these people, then you really put yourself in a really dangerous position. If you want to get to know someone, then you need to spend time getting to know them. Otherwise, you very well might be fearful of them if you're asked to assess them. It reminds me of that old Greg meme almost, where they're like, what do you think of me? And he's like, well, I don't rightfully know you, sir. And he's like, make an assessment. And he's like, I don't know how, right? Because if you don't rightfully know someone, how do you actually make an accurate assessment? And if you do make an assessment, it's more often than not going to be skewed by other people's assessments. And those things might be skewed. And the domino effect goes on and on and on. And this is, again, what Adichie says is the danger of a single story. So, something that I mentioned on my live stream the other night was that if you want to counter these things, in particular if you want to counter the single stories that loved ones in your life have, then you need to find a way to bridge the gap and have a vocabulary to invite them in to engage in critical dialogue about these issues. So I explained in my video that my way of understanding and having empathy for other people that were very different from me actually started with me learning the vocabulary of feminism. Once I started to recognize the ways in which women in general are discriminated against or oppressed in certain parts of the world, and including in the West, by having that type of vocabulary, I was able to find an avenue into understanding other people's burdens. I was able to understand immigration issues better. I was able to understand the plight of the gay community or the trans community. I was able to have a lot more empathy for the Palestinian people. I never really understood the ways in which the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was so much more nuanced and complicated than I ever thought, because I just fed into one story that I was taught. It wasn't until I actually started to research and learned from other folks around me that I thought, maybe my story is not the only story, and maybe my truth is not the only truth. So I don't have an answer for you of how to address your racist parents or how to address your sexist family members, but I do think that a good place to start is to find a common vocabulary. I've said this many, many times, but oftentimes when you disagree with someone, it's not usually because you actually disagree in the grand scheme of things. It's because you don't share the same assumptions. If you don't share the same fundamentals with someone, then it's going to be difficult for you to make larger scale assumptions with that person and then be able to share those things in common. So listen to your family members, listen to the things that they think, and hold your tongue, maybe hold back your judgment. This is something that I've had a really hard time doing, because when I believe so firmly in something, I want to assert it. And when someone says something that is very, very ignorant, it makes me uncomfortable. It makes me personally offended. And again, that's one of my own issues, that I hold people to the same expectations that I hold myself to. But a really good way to have dialogue with other people and to be able to change their minds is to be able to listen to them. As I said in the live IG story as well, you can have the exactest knowledge. This is what Aristotle says. You can share that exactest knowledge with other people. You can share statistics. You can share evidence. But most of the time, people are going to be persuaded by pathos, not by ethos, not by logos. So again, you can give someone, here are the statistics, here's the data, here's the evidence, I'm presenting it to you. You know, this is logic. People don't oftentimes buy into logic. They're going to buy into pathos. So they're going to be really persuaded and swayed by their own emotions. So if you let them express those emotions, and then you express your emotions, hopefully you can have a dialogue back and forth where you end up having a mutual understanding. Whether or not you're able to win over that person to understanding your point of view or not, at least you've given them that open space. You've created that bridge for you to have conversation back and forth. And then hopefully you can send a few of your men down that bridge to kind of implant themselves in that person's town. And then you send a few more, and then you send a few more, and all of a sudden the environment and the climate of that person's town has changed because you opened up that bridge. But if you just get angry at someone, if you think, hey, you know what, you're so ignorant, the things that you're saying are horrible, well, then you burn that bridge. And you may never get to have that bridge reopened. You may never get to build a new one, because by that point, tensions have already run so high that that kind of relationship, that kind of conversation with that person is long gone. And that would be the worst thing, for someone in your family to just not want to have conversations with you at all about these types of issues. I feel like that's far worse than disagreeing with someone all the time and not sharing the same ideas. That's always going to happen. That's just part of life. You will never see things the same way that your parents do or that your family members do all the time, and that's okay, you know? But if you just burn that bridge and you can't even have these conversations at all, then I feel like that's way, way worse. So this holiday season, when you visit your family, I hope that you will decide to engage them in conversation about things that matter to you. Feminism, racial justice, immigration, all these different things that are so important and so contemporary in our society today, if those things matter to you, then express those things to your family members. And even if they disagree with you, see if they will engage you in good conversation. So sorry for the clickbait title. This is not a way to deal with your racist family members, at least in the traditional sense. My best advice for you is to open up space to have a conversation and build a relationship in that way. I hope that this video was helpful to some of you who are asking these questions of yourself, and I hope to see you back here tomorrow for the next Vlogmas. And many people, by the way, were very interested in doing a book club, so let's see if we can get that into the works. Okay, bye guys, good night.